Hello, everybody, and welcome. It is just about our 12 p.m. Mountain Time start time. Or sorry, not 12 p.m., 6 p.m. Mountain Time start time.
That's better.
I apologize. My name is Zach Taylor. I'm the Digital Lab and Online Learning Manager here at Santa Fe Workshops. And we're going to get started here in just a moment. Just one more reminder that at the top of your screen, there is a View Options button. There you can adjust the ratio of your screen to be fit to screen. That will prevent anything from being cropped on your end during the presentation. So it is just about our start time. So at this moment, I would like to go ahead and invite in Reed Callanan to get the program started. Reed?
Thank you, Zach. It is a pleasure to be here this evening in early December with all of you. Thank you for joining us tonight for another Creativity Continues at Santa Fe Workshops. My name is Reed Callanan, and on behalf of all of us at Santa Fe Workshops, welcome and thank you for joining us for a special evening presentation from a company called Bostick Sullivan. And they are champions of the handmade photographic print. And so this evening's presentation will be made by two of their staff, Dana and Christy. And that presentation will be probably around 45 minutes to maybe pushing an hour. And we will take questions from you, the audience, all through the evening. So in the bottom of your screen, there's a little Q&A block there. And I encourage you to write your questions for Christy and Dana in that block. And Zach and I will be monitoring that throughout the whole presentation and interrupting nicely Dana and Christy at times to ask your questions. And then questions that don't get asked during the presentation we'll cover at the end of the hour. So that's the format for the evening. I want to give you a little introduction to this company called Bostick Sullivan, which on one level sells photographic chemicals, but they do a lot more than that. As I said earlier, they are a champion of alternative photographic processes. They are champions for the beauty of the handmade print. And they are a wonderful addition to our community in Santa Fe. They've been in business for 40 years, and they're a family-run business. So a lot of unique things about this little company that has a huge reputation, and not just in Santa Fe, but worldwide. So to give you a little history, here are some of the interesting points about this company. It was started in 1980 by Richard Sullivan and Melody Bostick, married. They've been married for 54 years now. Congratulations, Melody and Richard. They started in Los Angeles, where they lived. And it was started really because Richard, as a photographer and a chemist, was making platinum palladium materials on his backyard barbecue, of all things. And his friends were buying the platinum palladium. And he realized that he was making more money selling these metals than he was selling photographic prints. So he decided this is a good business to get into. And so he and Melody started the business in 1980 in LA. And then when Richard was nearing retirement age in the mid 90s, they decided, let's move, let's go on another new adventure, let's get away from LA. And fortunately for all of us, they picked Santa Fe to move to. In 1990, the Santa Fe Workshops was started, so they came a few years later to join a really vibrant photographic community in Santa Fe. And Richard and Melody have taken sort of a backseat right now. They're turning the business over, as they always planned, to their family. And Dana, their son, is more or less taking over the running of the business, and his wife Lee and Christy and the other longtime staffers at Bostick Sullivan. But Richard and Melody are still a vibrant part of the company and of Santa Fe's photographic community. So I'm pleased to be able to present the company, what they do, and what they're all about to the capable hands of Dana Sullivan and Christy, his trusted sidekick. So come on board, you two, and nice to see you. Great glasses, Christy.
Hey.
Thank you. Hi, everybody.
I love them.
Going?
You're
Thank
understated there tonight. Yellow glasses.
They were
Hi,
new.
Dana.
Hi. Thank you for that incredible introduction. That
My
was
pleasure.
wonderful. Wow, that was, I was blushing.
Blushing for your mom and dad, and
Yeah.
for the great things you've done. 40 years in business is a testament in itself, but you're still at this point vibrant and changing and growing, which is really a testament to you and your folks and your loyal staff. So I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to offer, seeing some prints, and then bringing some questions from the audience to you. So go ahead and start us off and tell us who you are.
Hi, I'm Dana Sullivan, and I just want to say thanks again to Reed and Zach, who's hosting this and handling all of our tech stuff. This is awesome. So thanks. So I'm Dana Sullivan.
I'm Christy Wiltenberg.
Tell us a little bit about you, Christy. How do we meet you? How do you have Santa Fe connections?
I'm originally from Michigan, but 2014 in college, I went to FPE 2014 in Baltimore and happened to find these guys making platinum palladium prints underneath of the fluorescent lights in the expo hall, and was completely blown away by what was happening. And just kind of, I hung out there for a hot minute, like all day Friday, and then the Saturday, he actually let me behind the booth and I started coding platinum palladium prints then. And that was when I got hooked. And I went back to college, and then I think like a few months later, before the semester ended, I had called and asked for Dana, and I was just like, yo, can I do an internship, come work for you? What can happen? I think a few weeks later, I got an email from Melody, and then I got to do it for school credit.
So you did an internship for us for a year and for a summer.
For a summer, for like 2 months.
And then
I went back to school, did my my little undergraduate thesis in gum prints, and then at the end of that year, I actually applied to work as a work study for Santa Fe photographic workshops. So did that 2015, and at the end of that summer, you guys had an opening, and then I moved out here, and I've been here since 2016 of
awesome.
September. Yes.
Sure. So yeah, you've been with us now, what?
Only 4 years.
4 years.
Which seems like a while.
But she's great. She's great.
It's only a blip in the map since they've been in business for 40 years.
So I've been doing this almost my entire life. My folks started this in our garage, and like Reed mentioned, we my dad cooked stuff on the barbecue because he didn't have a hot plate or any sort of scientific stuff. He bought a couple of beakers and ended up making this stuff, and I've just gone from filling bottles of developer and doing things like that to helping develop the different kits and new products that we have. So, we do a lot of great stuff here, and we're going to talk tonight a bit about several of the groundbreaking and milestone photographic processes, and sort of go over the history, the chemistry, the modern practice of it, and the I guess the cost and materials needed for a lot of these things. So here, I think we're going to start our presentation, and we have a slideshow that we're going to go with.
So we're going to screen share now and get started with our presentation. So bring you guys up here. So yeah, first our intro slide, and photography starts with the observation of light in terms of the pinhole effect as far back as the 5th century is when like the first observations were really found. And that's kind of, and so the beginnings of photography start with the observations of light in the 5th century. History's most influential philosophers such as Mosey, Aristotle, Galileo, Da Vinci, what was the Italian's name?
Brunelleschi.
Yeah,
they all used camera obscuras, which you'll see here in the diagram at the bottom of the screen. It's a pinhole projecting an upside down and left to right reversed image. And the artist is copying what he sees. Looks like he's got a paintbrush or a long pencil of some sort here. And so what this does is this sort of moves us from the observation and physics of light, and what I think, go to our next slide. What these observations lead to is things like perspective. That if you think of old paintings pre-Renaissance, and nothing looks like it really does. It sort of looks cartoonish.
Very flat, like one
right.
2D, not
But
3D.
Brunelleschi, using a camera obscura, was able to notice that a street, when you look down it, doesn't just extend straight ahead. They seem to, the street converges at a point in the distance. And this led to more understanding of the physics of light and how the rays travel. Now, that being said, there was a need for chemistry, that there was a necessity for how was the image going to
be fixed on a piece of paper or some sort of surface.
Or on a surface, sure.
So one of the founding blocks for that to start kind of realizing what needed to happen to make an actual photograph. In 1780, Elizabeth Fulham self-publishes a book going over water being a catalyst for certain chemical reactions to take place. And without water as a catalyst, it couldn't happen. So this book that she publishes, she gets into the field by wanting to figure out how to stain fabrics with silver and gold. And she even looked at copper and lead and tin and all these different metals. And in 1780, she published this book going over how water acts as the catalyst for certain chemical reactions of light to take place. And so this founding block is this is the founding block for the next important photographers and scientists to really start figuring out how to make a photograph stay on a piece of paper or surface. And so next we got just a little timeline for you guys of kind of how it all goes down. In 1780, they figure out that chemical reaction. And as you can see, not very long after, about 40 years after, they start kind of realizing, oh, this is how we can start to make this work.
Sure. And so today we're going to cover a few processes. The first one we're going to go over is probably a really famous one you know about, Daguerreotype. Then we're going to cover tintypes, which is, we're going to talk about wet plate collodion, which is the process which makes tintypes and ambrotypes and actual glass plate negatives.
Then we're going to talk about cyanotype and how that was with cyanotype, we could make photograms for a really long time, but we weren't able to make a positive print without a negative. So even though it kind of comes before daguerreotype and tintypes, we're going to talk about it in the middle because it's not really until a little bit later on that we can make prints with an actual negative in this process.
And Christy and Dana, can you explain what a photogram is? Some people might not know what that is. Ooh,
photogram is okay. Well, this one was drawn.
Camera.
This one was drawn on, but so a photogram is basically just like an image or a substrate, a plant matter placed against a photosensitive emulsion that will leave a white shadow. And why didn't I grab a better one?
Oh, yeah, a photogram is generally placing objects on the image. And we'll go over that when we talk about the cyanotypes, because that was one of the key things that
I have an image in the presentation about it, just not physically.
All good, thank you.
So yeah, we're going to go from cyanotype to albumin, and that was kind of a really big process that was the founding father to silver gelatin printing and what we kind of know of as traditional darkroom printing. And then lastly, we're going to talk about platinum palladium. And so the first process we're talking about is going to be daguerreotype.
Sure. Okay. So Louis Daguerre released the daguerreotype process to the world in 1839, and he took a retirement from the French government instead of patenting in applying for a patent, and so he took a guaranteed payout rather than try to exploit it commercially. So on its in its basic form, it's a copper plate that's been coated with a very, very thin layer of pure silver, and that is sensitized with fuming iodine crystals and developed with hot fuming mercury vapors.
Which, isn't the healthiest of chemicals to work with.
Sure. It invented in 1839, general public in 1840 learned about it, and it actually sort of fell out of favor by about 1853 in Europe, and then maybe the later 1850s in the United States. And so here, our next slide here is on the left here, you'll see a copper plate that's uncoated. And then on the right, you see this one, I believe, has been electroplated here with pure silver. And this pure silver is actually quite reactive. And when it oxidizes, it creates silver oxide, which is actually light sensitive itself, but it's too slow to make a photograph with. So the artist would take go back to that other one. The artist would take a series of buffing pads and cloths and bring the plate to a high shine, revealing pure, unadulterated metallic silver underneath. And then they would place this in a box with iodine, and the iodine would react to create silver iodide, which is light sensitive and much faster than silver oxide. So one of the things is you have to have your light type box here. So early boxes like the one on the left, we will load that sensitized plate under red light. Now they would generally use either candlelight or a window with a red piece of glass in it that would act as a safe light. And we load that into our camera to take an image. And with early daguerreotypes, if you look at the camera on the left here, you have a very small opening in the center of the lens, probably not much bigger than my finger. When early, say 1839, it took probably 2 minutes to expose a daguerreotype, which made it very difficult to take a picture of a person, which was really the ultimate goal of most photographers in the beginning, was to take pictures of people. But these long exposures didn't allow that to happen. And so the cameras, if you look at the camera on the right, look at how much bigger those lenses are. Right at the same time as the daguerreotype process was invented, a mathematician in Austria learned of the process and heard that they were having problems with the long exposures because they were using lenses that were like what Galileo, Chevalier telescope lenses, essentially. And if you were to, they're right around an f/15 speed. So these lenses on the right were the first mathematically calculated lens ever, and it gave an f rating of about 3.6, which is about 16 times faster than the previous lenses, which brings your exposure times down to a much more reasonable level. So if we go to the next one here, what we have here is the next like insane step in this process. We have a box here, and you can see underneath it, there's a small alcohol lamp placed below a lead cup that is filled with liquid mercury. And so after you've exposed your plate, after you've spent an hour polishing it, and then a half hour fuming it in a box, and then anywhere from 10 seconds to 2 minutes exposing it, you now needed to put it in this box that should have giant OSHA warnings all over it. So you would place it in there, because the problem was the image is only on the very, very top surface of the plate. And that will, if you put a liquid developer on it, it would just wipe right off the surface of the image. So they use this more delicate, dare I say, method of developing. And then after that, once it was developed, they could fix it in a traditional fixer, which is a nice change. And then it would be gilded with a gold chloride solution to add a little permanence to the very thin layer of silver on the top.
Dane, I have a question.
Sure.
All these processes, were they discovered by accident or by trial and error? It all sounds so fantastic.
Let's say these processes were developed by men and women of means. That your artist class, there was in Europe, there was a very upper crust sort of scientist, artist, adventurer kind of
the
thing.
lords and ladies who had money and free time to do whatever they wanted.
Exactly. And so these things took time, they took money, they took a lot of trial and error and throwing away a lot of money in pursuit of not necessarily personal fortune, but certainly personal glory. There was a lot of that involved. And so if you think of like some of the early processes, Niepce had a process using asphaltum and metal plates and hardening asphalt on a plate using light, and then using mineral spirits, and then daguerreotypes using copper plates and these other things. You start to see that there's a lot of printmaking. If you've been in a print shop and they have copper plate gravures, they have asphaltum to make like the ground on the plates for etchings. And so a lot of these guys were using materials that they already had around because they were doing artwork, and they thought maybe there's a way to use these same chemicals or these same materials that we have to fix the image using light itself. And it was a lot of accidents, a lot of people sharing information with each other.
It's almost a race for information. Like once they kind of realized that like you could use light and metal salts to kind of get a photoreactive substrate, like people were just kind of like racing each other to be like the next big process that they could publish in the scientific world, and like be like photography was invented to like take portraits of people and to like basically make copies and have like similar, like to have copies of things, which was basically what I was trying to say.
Sure, the ultimate goal was to be able to make multiple copies of pictures of the same person. The same picture multiplied by 1,000 or something, because otherwise it was just like a painting, and so the early thing, like daguerreotype, everyone is one of a kind, and they're almost impossible to even photograph to try and make copies of them.
They're too shiny. They have that mirror-like finish, so they're just
Sure.
a little bit too shiny. But like, well, the next process that came out of daguerreotype goes into tintypes, which is a little bit easier.
Sure. Yeah. Here we have wet plate collodion. It sort of is a direct, like a direct successor to the daguerreotype process. What it is originally it was a steel plate that had been japanned with a asphaltum solution. And the where did I and what happens is the iodine is put into suspension in collodion, which is a thick viscous solution dissolve in ether and alcohol, and it dries very quickly. And what happens, instead of having the silver on the plate and the iodine coming to it, we have the iodine and, in this case, bromine in the plate itself, which is, actually, we have a screen all about that. So, okay, so here's a couple of famous images. We have Lincoln on the left. This is one in the Library of Congress that's broken. And so we can clearly see here, we have Billy the Kid on the right, another one of the most expensive photographs in the world. Okay, so here bringing up this one, we've got the gentleman on the left. He's poured a solution of collodion onto the plate, and he's draining the excess back into the plate. Now you can see through the glass plate, he's got a little suction cup holding on the back so that his fingers don't warm the plate and dry the collodion on the other side. So what he's doing is pouring the collodion that has iodine and bromine in it. And then on the right here, we see a glass tank and a light tight box that would be filled with a silver nitrate solution. And when he places the plate into that tank using what kind of looks like a little dipper, almost like a salad fork that's been, or a salad spoon that's been folded over, that they dip into the tank in the dark, and then they will expose it very similarly to the way a daguerreotype is exposed. Similar exposure times, anywhere from, say, 1 second in bright sun to 10 seconds in the shade, depending on how your f-stop as well. So the plate, this glass plate, is put in this plate holder that opens like a book with a hinge in the middle. And if you see at the top here, this is a wooden insert here. Oops, this is a wooden insert that fits in, and you can change the orientation. So the plate would fit between these here and go down and fit between these here for a vertical, or for a landscape mode, they would turn the plate. And then this whole thing could be taken out, and a smaller one or a larger window could be added to change the plate, so that you don't have to do anything to the camera to change the plate size. Say you've got a rich customer who's got $3 for a photograph, and then the next customer has $1 for a photograph. You don't have to move the camera or do anything to do it. And so you see that the silver nitrate stains the inside black, this is a vintage one here, and they don't survive very much well because the silver nitrate deteriorates the wood, and like it's just not conducive to
The new ones
to
are made
wood.
out of much easier to clean material. Like
Right, they're plastic.
plastics.
So, all right, so it goes here. After they've loaded it into that holder and exposed it, most photographers would have a portable darkroom. And you can see here he has a number, this X up here. He has a water tank flowing down. He has his Y here is the silver tank actually sunk through, but since it's a light tight box, it doesn't matter. He's got on the back a red window and then a curtain, and then what looks like this water tube that leads to a tray with another hose to a catch box here.
It's a very nice setup.
So yeah, it's a very cool little setup. So about half of the process needs to be done in that box. Generally, it's developed by hand, and like it says here, about a ½ ounce of solution or a developer to do one plate, and it's a one-shot developer, and they rinse it to stop it, and at that point it's no longer light sensitive. So what will go here to this next one, so starting on the left, you have what the actual plate looks like after it's been developed, but then the development has been stopped. So you'll see this nice negative reversal image. Now the second one is the plate being, so this other box here has fixer in it. And this particular box has cyanide fixer in it, potassium cyanide. So incredibly dangerous, deadly stuff that I don't ever use personally. I use a standard rapid fix like Ilford or Kodak or the
Just
one we
straight
manufacture.
60% ammonium thiosulfate.
And so after that's fixed, you can see that this is a multiple plate image that they did for a Billy the Kid reenactment session on TV, that the original Billy the Kid was part of 4 plates like that, and they were cut apart and nobody knows where the other 3 are. And then so finally on the right here, this last image, we've got it's a gum sand rack, which is the sap of a conifer tree, and lavender oil and alcohol mixed together, and that's poured on the surface and the excess is drained off, and that leaves a nice hard glossy surface. You can still scratch it, but it doesn't leave the actual emulsion layer exposed. And I'd like to thank Mark Osterman at the George Eastman Museum for these photographs here. He's great. And so that basically covers where your where tin types are. Now we can also do this process on a glass plate, except the glass plate needs to be backed with a black backing, usually felt or velvet inside a case. You can do a positive, a one-of-a-kind positive that way. But the big thing with wet plate was that it allowed you to make a negative to print multiple prints or make another negative. And so you could commercialize, and this led us to where we could actually make multiple copies of the same image, all the same, all identical, like an edition. And so the wet plate process, we see people now do a lot of these tin types. But if you think all of those tin Civil War photographs from Matthew Brady and Timothy O'Sullivan and things like that, those were all wet plate done on glass so that they could print other prints from them. So This brings us to cyanotypes, Christy.
Brings us to cyanotype, which again had kind of come a little bit before the 1850s, was when the daguerreotype and wet plate collodion process was pretty popular. This was invented by Sir John Herschel in 1842, and cyanotype is made with ferric ammonium citrate and potassium ferrocyanide chemicals, and they're both versions of iron that when you combine together create a light sensitive material that will leave a blue residue behind once it is exposed to light. And so the first things they did with this was photograms, and that's the image that we have here on the left is a photogram. Anna Atkins was a botanist back in the 1840s, and she used to go out and she would have pre-coated paper with her, and she'd find a specimen that she thought was fascinating. She'd put it on the piece of paper, expose it in the sunlight, and wash it in the nearby stream, and it does not hurt any of the surrounding environment at all. This is one of the safest processes you can do, one of the cheapest, and it's very friendly. You just need water, and you can put it on almost anything. I love dyeing fabrics with this process. And so Anna Atkins, she is the first female photographer, and she illustrates one of the first photo book with cyanotype.
I don't think you can like understate that importance that it was the first photo illustrated book.
She's the first photo illustrated book. She's the first female photographer, and they have an exhibition of her books at the New York Library still up.
So there's I think a dozen or two of her original books around, and they still look good. It's a very archival process. It'll fade a little bit if it's just exposed to light all the time, but you put it in the dark in like a drawer, and the blue will come right back. And it's a very archival process. This is what they use to make architectural blueprints as well, simple line drawings. But cyanotypes are one of my favorite processes. It's a green solution. Once you mix the ferric ammonium citrate and potassium ferrocyanide together, you can soak it in fabric. You can soak fabric in it to dye it, or you can use a brush and coat it onto paper. And so the middle image, you see it exposing under UV light. Did you explain with the first one that's coming out of a tray of the solution?
Yes, there's a tray of solution, and I had just dipped that. I believe that one is a little zipper bag, and you want to soak it for about 2 minutes so it really absorbs the chemistry, and then let it dry completely. Once it's dry completely, it'll be that yellow, and you want to put a negative, some photograms on top of it, and then underneath the light. As that's what we see here going on in the middle picture.
Yeah, what are we seeing there? What is that?
That is yarrow on top of
on
top of a sensitized fabric in the Newark plate burner.
Okay, so they've been flattened with glass against
This is a Newark plate burner that has a vacuum frame, and so the yarrow didn't squish all the way, so the glass part of the vacuum is just heavy on top of it, squishing it down, but that's it exposing. And then once you put it into water, as you see on the image on the right, it turns this color blue. And one fun thing you can do is add hydrogen peroxide, everyday hydrogen peroxide into the bath, and it'll turn even bluer, oxidizing the iron faster. And so this is one thing that a lot of students at colleges and other programs will do is they'll make a tapestry with everyone laying on top of it. They soak that whole tapestry, get a whole bunch of people to lay on top of it and create photograms. And that is the white shapes of everybody. And this may be from the world's largest tapestry. We got sent a picture of it. We donated chemistry, and there was a Guinness World Book of Records largest cyanotype tapestry. And this might be from that. And then so photograms, you can remodel chairs. I've reupholstered chairs.
Those are the chairs we're sitting on right now. So that's so sure. All right.
And then we got Melody here with her flag.
Oh, hi, Mom. Hi, Mom. If you're watching out there, we put you in the slideshow. So that's my mom showing off a cyanotype flag.
And then we got the middle image, that's Lee's trip to Maine, and then some more photograms. And then the image on the right is made from a negative that I took in New Orleans.
So yeah, people weren't making photographs with cyanotypes until the early 1850s because there were no negatives available to do it. So they were doing just found objects and other things like that.
which after Cyanotype, Daguerreotype, and wet plate collodion, we finally bring ourselves to albumin, which was one of the first commercialized processes and the founding father of silver gelatin printing.
Yeah, it's the albumin is the where photography became accessible for. We have the wet plate collodion negative, and now we have the albumin process, which is easy enough, cheap enough, and fast enough that you can make multiple copies of an image on paper and quickly duplicate them. If we think about silver gelatin paper and film right now, that's a gelatin. It's an animal product. Before the advent of gelatin in photography, they looked for other ways to suspend these chemicals. The collodion, for one thing, which is on the wet plate, and then they used albumin, egg whites, as a suspender, as a binder to hold these chemicals. And so what we're using is an albumin that has salt in it that mixes with a silver nitrate solution and creates a brown print. And it was exploited from the 1860s on up. We have a photo album that have pictures of Edwin and John Wilkes Booth brothers, a little famous. So, and those are made by, as albumins. So here, we're not lying. Look at these pictures. This is a tray full of egg whites that have had some table salt added to them. We folded a piece of paper, edges up, and then we actually floated on top of the surface for about 5 or 6 minutes. And then you lift it up and drain off the corner. We let it dry. We actually harden it with a iron, and that cooks the eggs to the surface so they're no longer, you can't dissolve them with water anymore. And we do a second layer to give a higher gloss surface. And then, so what we're gonna do here is, in this picture on the left, we have the albumin coated paper soaking in silver nitrate, which actually makes it light sensitive. Now with this process, we would generally be working under a red safe light, but we took pictures under normal light. And so what you'll see in this top right-hand picture is I have a negative in there and I'm laying the paper face down on it, and it's going, and then on the other one, the bottom one, we are looking at the negative on top of the paper. And so you can kind of see a little bit there. And so what we do is we expose it under intense ultraviolet light. And what happens is that frame allows us to peel half of the image back, and we can check the exposure. And if it doesn't seem like with this process, it darkens as the image exposes. And so we can check it this way. And if it's underexposed, we can fold it back and it doesn't upset the registration between the negative and the paper. And so we then wet process it with water. That's the first step, is you just rinse it with water. It goes through a cold toning bath. It goes through a fixer bath. Here we have a couple of sample images done by
students from our albumin workshop last year.
We had an albumin workshop last year, and we've got Robert Pitt and
our buddy Brian Edwards, who's a Santa Fe local, potentially maybe watching right now, but we're not sure. So hi, Brian.
So those show you, the rich tones you can get out of them. I really like those. So albumin allowed us to exploit the photographic process, but there were still these gentlemen and gentlewoman photographers that wanted to go further, wanted something more elegant, wanted something suited to, say, a more moody sort of
elitist, all that kind of moody tones.
more people with money inventing the awesome photography. So what early 1800s platinum salts were noticed to be, certain platinum salts were noticed to be light sensitive. Iron salts mixed with the platinum and palladium increased that sensitivity, which is where we get the modern chemistry that we know from with the platinum and palladium, because it's using well, let's just say it's extremely archival, and it really came into fashion in the late 1880s through the turn of the 20th century. And so the platinum process itself is a hand-coated process. Here on the left, we have a fellow who's coating his paper with the solution. Now, the platinum and palladium salts, you look at roughly, to do that image that he's printing there, that probably costs about $10 to print that image that he's doing there. So we don't exactly want to soak paper in it or soak cloth in it, because it's just not in anybody's budget.
Very expensive process.
Yes.
Very
and
expensive.
So we have some prints here on the right that are in the wash. And you can see that those prints have, they've got a nice black border around them outside the negative, which most people will matte out. Some people like to show it. And so we look here, we have a periodic table. We've got this red box in the center. And if you're not familiar with it, we have rhodium, which is, we have all of these noble metals. In this group here, silver isn't quite there, but these 5 here you can't dissolve these in anything other than pure chlorine. Most corrosive substance known to man is pure chlorine, and that's all these will dissolve in because of their atomic structure, their specific atomic structure. But what that also does is add an incredible archival nature to these prints. And because of the specific chemistry and the way the light reacts with the chemistry, it produces a tonal scale virtually unmatched when it comes to darkroom photographic processes. You can have everything from the blackest black to the deepest or brightest white and have details in them.
It has a very beautiful long tonal range that is, like you said, unmatched by other processes. We often joke that when you're making a digital negative on screen and you're looking at how your image is you're editing it and looking at the blacks, we often joke that you will see more in print than you do on screen in the darks, because the platinum palladium chemistry just holds so much detail and so much tonal range.
So yeah, see, here we have, Paul Strand, and he was a deeply tortured man, I would say, and his photography often reflects that. But in person, this image, these windows in the background, these openings, have so much detail in them that you can't really see on the screen, and it doesn't really do it justice. And so you have things here, F. Holland Day. We've got this is as dark as you think it is. And you still have tonal separations in his shoulder here. And you can see this in person, this information is there. There is vast amounts of detail in there, which many artists felt was a huge benefit to them and benefited this sort of pictorialism and other schools of photography.
Absolutely. And then, yeah, platinum palladium was like printed by so many of like the photographers that you learn about in history of photography. Alfred Stieglitz, Gertrude Casebier, Juliet Margaret Cameron has some platinum prints. It's this beautiful process that just holds so much detail and is incredibly archival. You're making it with platinum and palladium metals, and it shouldn't ever fade on you. As long as nothing happens to the paper, the print will still be there.
Sure, as long as the support holds up underneath it, the paper holds up, then the image should never fade.
Not even in direct sunlight.
Right, exactly. All
right, and so that's our presentation.
All right.
And we have some prints to show you, and we can also open up this to
Q&A.
Q&A.
Let's go for Q&A.
Yeah, if any of you guys in the audience have questions, go ahead and type them in. We have a few here for you guys, but feel free to show your prints first.
Well, I want to show you this daguerreotype that came in this beautiful box. Melody brought us some presents today. And so we have this, you want to switch the camera over? We have this beautiful box. It's a little torn. I'm being very careful with it. But they used to make these beautiful ornate boxes for daguerreotypes and tintypes alike. And daguerreotypes were very cool. This came with this beautiful little note here. They had that mirror-like finish. And so let me just bring this out here. And so you can see here, you can't really see it. It's very shiny. It looks like a mirror, but when you get it straight on, it just is beautiful and holds so much detail. So this is one of the daguerreotypes that they have in their collection. And then let me show you some tintypes, some modern ones and some historical ones.
Okay.
So they also would put tintypes into these little cases. This is like an old tintype that looks, we think this might be, what did they call it?
Memento Mori.
Memento Mori.
Yeah, it's there were a lot of post-mortem photographs done.
What do you typically pay for these things these days? If you find tintypes or daguerreotypes?
This one was mine. I found at an occult store up in Denver. I think it might have paid like $35 for this, but I know Melody and like a lot of people, you just kind of sometimes will find random gemstones in thrift stores. Otherwise, you'll pay a little antique fee for them. We also have this beautiful book of tintypes. Like, look at.
Wow.
This is a very unusual. Mostly people had books of the CDVs, the carte de visite, and this is an actual book of individual tiny tintypes, all about the size of a postage stamp. And you can see a lot of them have shifted over the years, but we don't want to touch them and scratch them or do anything. So if we wanted something done, so if you think about it, a average, back in the day, a average tintype, a traveling photographer in a Civil War camp was charging $1 for a tintype. And we're usually talking a, small, maybe 2-inch by 3-inch tintype, and they were charging $1 for that. Now, that book was filled with probably 75 images, and then it's put in a book. This book probably cost over $100 to shoot and put together for whoever did it in probably the 1860s to maybe up to the 1880s through this here. The dress looks pretty fancy.
Do you want to talk about this one?
So, okay. And what we have here is a tintype shot in Afghanistan in 2013. It's a little hard under this light, but he's holding an AR-15 across his body and he's wearing fatigues. And so these were shot by a fellow in Afghanistan who was a side gunner on a helicopter, and he smuggled all of his cameras and chemistry in.
Smuggle. This stuff is hazardous. We can only ship it via certain, wet plate collodion is hazardous, and oftentimes we'll have customers in a different country want to order it. And sometimes we can't because their country doesn't allow it, but otherwise we can, and the cost is pretty expensive. So he smuggled this into Afghanistan
on a C-130 transport airplane, apparently. So, but I guess you can get away with that when you're in the United States Army and flying on C-130 transport planes.
Got
So
some
sure.
albumin prints here to show.
Are there any questions? Does anybody have anything going on there?
Oh, yeah, we have lots of questions.
Okay.
I'll start off with a question from Drew Wagner. And he wants to know, could you discuss hardening albumin before the first and the second coating? Alcohol,
okay.
press iron.
Sure. Okay. The albumin, we like to do a 2 coats, which builds up the surface and gives it a slightly glossier tone or, surface. And egg whites, when you dry them, if we were to put it back on top of the tray of albumin, it would start to dissolve the egg whites that are on the surface of the paper already. And we don't want that. We want to build up another layer. So what we do is essentially cook the eggs to the surface using either a dry mount press or just a clothing iron, and sandwich the paper, the albumin paper, between 2 sheets of clean rag paper, and we harden it that way. You can also harden it with alcohol, which chemically hardens it, but I don't like the way it, I don't like to do it that way because of the way I feel it affects the surface of the paper negatively. So we basically cook the eggs onto the surface so that they won't dissolve when we put a second layer on. And then the silver nitrate actually acts as a hardener. If you get silver nitrate stains on your skin in a couple of days, it flakes off like a scab, leaving perfect skin underneath because it hardens your skin in just one layer.
Should I switch the camera and show these guys?
Oh, sure. Here, we have some other samples here.
So one thing we should mention is that we just kind of revamped the albumin kit. And so we do kind of have a new albumin kit that will produce some really beautiful images. These are some like historical images, which I found these in random thrift stores. Like these are kind of like, you may have seen these in random places. They're like done on cardstock and they're just like a little thin image.
That's a cabinet card.
Yeah.
That's a cabinet card there. And then we have a CDV here, which I believe this actually might be another, I don't know. I think this might be a memento mori, but it's hard to know. It's hard to know.
So these are like some historical ones. And then here we got some modern ones. This one was done from a dry plate glass negative, the J-Lang Graphica dry plates. And then this is the one that is in the pictures that we were showing earlier. This is done with our kit with the double floating. You can kind of see that we bent it there and like put it in. And this is a double coating with the hardening of the albumin and the silver with our new kit that we revamped last year. And we have some really intense instructions online that go through everything. Then we got this one more last fun, shiny historical albumin of what it might have looked like in the past.
Now a lot of these prints have a high gloss surface and they were run through rollers that were heated by some sort of flame that would heat up the rollers, and it was called burnishing. And that would take a image that had sort of a matte or satin finish and give it a high gloss finish by sort of melting the surface with heat and pressure. Okay, so you've got this. Anything else going on? Do we have any other questions?
I have a question from Rosie Calderon. It kind of relates back to you guys talking about the smuggling of chemicals into Afghanistan, but it appears that she's in Mexico. Do you ship kits to Mexico? Is that possible?
Depends on what it is. Depends on what it is. In our experience, Mexico is an interesting one.
Yeah.
Because certain carriers aren't always very friendly getting the package to you. So we have to ship through the post office, which this year was a little scary, but now the post office is better internationally. Wet plate collodion is hazardous, and we can't ship that one to Mexico, but we can ship platinum palladium, cyanotype, salted paper, collodion kits.
We can send about 90%
just
of
not
what's
wet plate
on
collodion.
our website. So it
Collodion,
depends
the
on what
ether,
they're
the
gonna do.
alcohol, the sanderac varnish, the silver nitrate, and crystals are all considered hazardous. In the States, those must be shipped via UPS ground. Internationally, it's got to go FedEx, hazmat goods, and it's typically about $450.
Contact us and we can talk about shipping, especially to, Mexico is just an interesting sort of thing. So they've always been a little bit of a hassle.
Reed, do you have any questions?
Well, this is from Lisa Cantor. When coating paper with cyanotype,
Yes.
I find that the paper often bows and buckles, leading to an uneven coating. What do I do?
How are you? Well,
Are you using too much?
so with most processes and most cotton papers, there's a sweet spot of emulsion, and you really want to. Sometimes we've heard people are like with Cyanotype, they'll make a batch solution that they'll dip their brush into and paint it on. You want to count out drops into a tray, and Cyanotype solution goes really far. What was that?
You said into a tray.
Into a cup, a plastic or glass, shot glass type cup. No metal for any of this stuff. And you want to count out the drops and pour it into a straight line and take a wet brush and evenly with vertical and horizontal strokes, coat it back and forth and just let it dry there. And it shouldn't buckle as it's drying. It may be buckled when it comes out of the wash because it's gone through water, but then you can put your finished print that's dry into a dry mount press to flatten it. But if your print is buckling during the coating, you're using too much emulsion.
Most likely, yeah.
So, yes.
Okay, thanks.
That answer.
Perfect. Let me see here. There's a good one from Catherine Steinecker. How common is carbon printing today? And what advice would you have for someone thinking of trying it? Do you sell the tissue for carbon printing?
Not anymore. We used to have carbon tissue that we were able to make. Richard and Melody made it, but we no longer quite have the manpower to make the carbon tissue. So the first step is you really want to research how to make your glop, which is what is used in carbon printing. It's a gelatin mixture with a black pigment powder, some sort of hardener that you want to mix together and then spread onto paper evenly. And so that's kind of the first step. And there are a bunch of people doing it. It's getting more popular. Jonathan Tala was in a call for entry show that we did last year. He's doing beautiful for carbon color prints. And then one of the old friends of Richard and Melody's who was at APIS is doing them too. He's pretty popular with them. I can't remember his name,
off the top of
but
my
there are
head.
a few people. If you Google some carbon printing, you should pull up a few different resources.
Sandy King.
He's got a website. We do have
really
a free book download on our website that if the link doesn't work for you, just email the contact form and I can get it to you. But we do have a free ebook that Richard Sullivan wrote, Richard Sullivan, our founder, on carbon printing. And you can always call us and we can put you on with Richard and he'll probably talk your ear off about carbon.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, Reed, your turn.
A question, can you describe the process of ivory types?
Ivory types. I haven't done that one before, but I've heard of it.
I'm not real. I've seen them. I generally know a little bit about them, but that's I think I'm going to take a hard pass.
We have our areas of specialty. Which is albumin, wet plate, platinum palladium, cyanotype, Van Dyke, saltpeter, collodion. And for everything else, we just need to research them. But if you do have any questions and don't seem to be able to find any answers online, you can always give us a call.
Contact Mark Osterman at the George Eastman Museum. He's, if anybody knows about doing ivory types, he's probably doing them in his garage. So
We did have one in our show that we did last year. We did a 2019 call for entry, the handmade photograph. And I know that we had a gorgeous one in that show. It was beautiful.
Okay, well, here's one I know you can answer. Can you speak about the Zeotype process?
Mhm.
The Zeotype process is invented by your father. It's invented by Richard Sullivan here in Santa Fe, named after the Zeotype, after, you know, the Zea.
The Zea symbol, which is on the New Mexico state flag, and it's a stylized sun symbol, if you're not familiar with it.
Zeotype was a question to describe Zeotype process.
Yes, what's the process?
Okay, so platinum palladium uses sodium palladium and ferric oxalate and either traditional platinum or a Na2 platinum to make a print. Zeotype uses just different versions of similar chemistry. It uses lithium palladium and or cesium palladium and ferric ammonium oxalate, also ammonium ferric oxalate, the name interchanges. And that right there will make a print. And with platinum palladium, you expose it while it's dry. You don't quite get the full printout effect. You kind of have to expose. Sorry, you have to do an exposure test to find the exposure for platinum palladium, and it needs a developer. Zeotype, you print it while it's wet, and it gives you a printout effect. So you can, just like with albumin, you can see it exposing as you go, and then it just develops in water and needs a clearing bath. And the drier the emulsion is, the warmer the print will be, the wetter it is, the cooler it will be. You can play with sodium tungstate and gold chloride to get some fun split tones.
I think what it is it's a modification of the traditional platinum and palladium process that generally doesn't need a developer. And so the image comes up as you expose it, like when we showed that albumin print coming up, and you could peel it back and see the exposure and adjust your exposure by looking at that. That's similar to how the Zeotype works. But in the end, the print is undetectable. If you ran every scientific test you could on a Zeotype print, it would tell you that it was a platinum or palladium.
Well, it would say palladium, it wouldn't say platinum.
Sure, I mean, well, you can use platinum in Zeotype, but it's not very common.
I love
Okay,
Zeotypes.
We have time for one more question, although
Oh,
I think
What-
you're.
what happened
Like-
there?
my computer is unhappy.
What happened? Is that
I've never
It
seen
this?
looks
that
like it.
before.
It looks like it overheated.
Got too hot.
Yeah.
Oh, that was our camera. Our camera doesn't, our main camera doesn't like us.
Here,
So
you can move that other camera over, right? You have it on a tripod.
Yes. One
think you're-
second.
Sorry about that. It looks like you're.
Sorry, guys.
that was very strange. Our camera's been on here for several hours. And hey, we had a second camera set up just for this, Zach, right? So
I've never seen
Oh,
someone's
man.
camera overheat, so that's a first.
that was, I have never, did you know that could happen?
It's been on all day, so
Yeah, it
that's probably
has.
part of it.
So, all right.
Sorry, guys. Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second.
Oh man, this is terrible. I feel
Alright.
horrible.
Okay, we're about done anyway. So
We got,
Zach,
Okay.
if you have-
we got one or two more questions, and that's it. So
yeah. So go
There
ahead,
you go.
Zach.
perfect. Okay, so I got a question from Caroline. I think it's Philippone about paper. What's your favorite type of paper for hand coding? Do you like texture? Do you like smooth? What are your each individual favorite papers?
The goal is you need 100% cotton rag paper that doesn't have any special things in it, no additives or buffers, because you're chemically interacting with the paper. So typically you want a smooth surface cotton rag paper, and if it works, it works.
Yeah, but there are also Kozo papers, which are mulberry,
Organic
and
papers.
they have hemp papers now. So it really is a matter of what is your personal preference, and then also what will chemically interact properly with the hand-coded processes. You have to make sure your pH is right. You have to make sure the sizing is compatible so that you can actually coat the paper and not have the chemistry run right off of it. So right now, most of the really popular papers are 100% cotton rag papers. Most people prefer a smooth surface. They have some that have a slightly rougher surface, like the
most are
Reeves
pretty smooth.
BFK.
Yeah, the Reeves BFK has a textured surface, but something like Hahnemuhle Platinum Rag will work for all of these hand-coated processes. It's a great paper. Arch Splatine we love, the light Arch Splatine, Revere Platinum, Burger Cot 320 is still a pretty good favorite, and then Reeves BFK. And those papers, Hahnemuhle Platinum Rag, Arch Splatine, light Arch Splatine, Revere Platinum, and Reeves BFK will work for like most of these hand-coated processes, no problems.
I really like the Hahnemuhle
It's beautiful.
paper. They've really, really been great and responsive when it comes to the alt process world. So I would say that that's probably my go-to paper right now.
Perfect.
Okay,
Thank
thanks.
you.
I have one final question, which is for you, Dana. Your mom and dad are grooming you to take over this business when they actually officially retire, whenever that is. What's your vision for Bostick and Sullivan for the next 40 years?
Oh, wow. 40 years. I really see us moving into different processes, other processes that we have still yet to exploit. I think that online learning, like what we're doing here, is really big for us. I don't know. It's more of a philosophical thing. I'd like to move us into, being part of a larger, bigger alternative process, an antique, handcrafted, the art of photography, what you guys have been doing for 30 years. I really appreciate what you guys do. And I find that the more information we can provide to our customers is where you get that customer satisfaction. Now, that's where we need to be. We need to make our customers happy and make things as easy as possible for them. So I think online learning, moving towards more sort of personalized service for us. I have a 15-year-old son. When he was 6 years old, I had him in the dark room making tin types, and it was just like one of these great moments that I had with him, this moment of pride. And so I certainly hope that he wants to be a part of this, because I think I think adding to that, and then we have great people like Christy right here. I couldn't survive without her here holding my hand sometimes. So I really see us moving forward and looking great over the next years. Thanks for the question.
Sure. So the next generation is in place already for the future of Bostick and Sullivan, certainly for 40 years. So
he's playing Call of Duty in the other room right now. Yeah, right. So
I'll be watching you.
Perfect.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Dana and Christy, and thank you, Richard and
so
Melody.
much for having us here. Thank you for putting this together. You guys are amazing. This was wonderful.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you all very much.
I just wanted to mention a couple of programs that are upcoming here. We have two of our SFW perspectives, which are our lecture format programs. The next one is with Joyce Tennyson, and that happens December 15th, 16th, and 17th. And then in January, we have a program with Stephen Wilkes called Day to Night Through Ellis Island to J. Maisel. So tune in to Stephen's presentation starting the 12th of January. You can find out about both of these programs on our website, SantaFeWorkshops.com. I invite you to join us as we move into new online programming until we can get back to Santa Fe and offer programs there, so we can go out and do a field trip to Bostick and Sullivan, which is not that far away from our campus in Santa Fe. So good night, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Zach. Thanks again to Bostick and Sullivan. Have a good
Thanks.
evening.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you all. Have a good night.
Adios.